It was a sunny summer Sunday here in the Midwest, but really all the talk in Big Ten circles was about slumming in the Big Ten West. How much has Nebraska contributed to the national perception of the Big Ten West, and is that perception accurate? Before we get into that, just a reminder to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Big Ten content all offseason long. Always crush that like button to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses. If you thought we were going to get through the weekend, if you thought we were going to get through this Sunday with little news, with little hoopla, you were wrong. Because Tom Chattel published an article in this Sunday's Omaha World Herald that got a lot of people, including myself, talking in Big Ten circles. Now, I will say this. I'm not going to go after Tom as much as other people have in Big Ten circles, because you look at a lot of this article and it's not super controversial, right? It's talking about increased difficulty in scheduling, the adjustments that have to be made by Trav Alberts and maybe other Big Ten athletic directors, right? With Michigan, USC, Ohio State, Penn State, whatever, all these teams on the schedule more and more often. Now you might have to adjust things you do out of conference, right? The Big Ten taking away the requirement of having to play a Power 5 team. And I think that's maybe for a couple of reasons. It's probably because the athletic directors pointed it out, says, if we're going to look at this schedule and we're going to have to play this schedule and we got a 12-team playoff on the horizon, maybe taking it easy on the non-conference side of things might be the way to go. So that's a lot of what this article was really about. But there was one line that really got people going. I'll touch on that here in just a minute. But in terms of scheduling, I just want to say this for the future. It's not going to get any easier, folks. Okay, if you think the Big Ten schedule is tough right now, wait 5, 10, 15 years down the road when maybe Miami and Florida State are in the league, maybe Oregon and Washington are in the league, maybe Notre Dame's in the league, maybe Clemson and North Carolina are in the league. As long as television networks are pulling the strings, as long as they're calling the shots, and as long as they are the source of big-time Big Ten revenue, you're going to have football powerhouses continue to join the Big Ten Conference. That's just the way it is. Football schedules are going to get more difficult as we go along. Now, the line in the article that everybody's getting worked up about, right? The context really provided that Tom Chattel led into this comment with. It's like, hey, we're playing Michigan, we're playing USC, we're playing Ohio State. Bring it on. It beats slumming in the Big Ten West. First of all, I want to say it's a little ironic, tad bit maybe hypocritical, coming from a Nebraska reporter. And before I go any further in this video, here's what I want to say about Nebraska. Husker fans, you are in a great spot right now. With Matt Rule as your head coach, an experienced program builder leading your football team, I personally believe Nebraska is going to get to the point where they're winning 7 minimum, 8, 9, maybe even 10 games per season. That included with a difficult schedule, because you have a guy that knows what it takes to build up a college football program instead of the immaturity that you had in Scott Frost. That was your last hire as head coach of this program. So I want to say that right off the bat. Now let's get into this theory that all of a sudden the Big Ten West is this division that should be frowned upon and looked down upon. I don't subscribe to that theory. I don't, because it's not true. This theory all of a sudden that the Big Ten West is this embarrassment to Power 5 football and all of a sudden is just not a even average division is just not true. It's not true, and I'm going to talk about that here later in the video. I think a lot of that, where that's coming from for Tom Chattel, for example, in this comment in this article, and people maybe outside of the Big Ten at the national level, I think a lot of it is coming what happened this last year. It's coming from a lot of recency bias. And the Big Ten West wasn't even that bad this season. There were a lot of solid teams. There were a lot of good teams that beat up on each other, right? Wisconsin came down a little bit to 6-6. You know who rose up? Illinois rose up to an 8-win team. Purdue rose up a little bit. Minnesota stayed at that 8-win level. And Iowa I think, was the punching bag. I think that's something else to go in to this Big Ten West formula from last year as well. Iowa was this punching bag because of their offense and because how bad their offense was and what was going on. Sun being the offensive coordinator, all that stuff going on. And despite all of that, Iowa still went 7-5, and Iowa was still in the Big Ten West race all the way at the end of the season. You had a lot of teams that beat up on each other, and last season was an anomaly in the Big Ten West. Let me go into that. Before Purdue, because Purdue was an unranked Big Ten West champion. Before Purdue, the Big Ten West champion was ranked outside the top 15 just one time since 2014 when the split happened, and that was 2018 when Northwestern was ranked 21st in the country. Give me the Big Ten West over the Big 12 North. Remember the old Big 12 North any day of the week. From 2004 to 2010, the Big 12 North had two unranked division champions. Colorado got in there a couple of times. Nebraska was number 19 in 2006. They were number 21 in 2009. Missouri was number 19 in 2008. And like the Big Ten West, they got beat every single one of those Big 12 championship games. Now, on the contrary, 4 times the Big Ten West champion was a top 10 team in the country. 2019, at the end of the season, final rankings, there were 3 Big Ten West teams in the top 15 in the country, right? You had a top 5 Iowa team. What was that, 2015? You had Wisconsin teams that were 10-win teams. I think there was an 11-1 Wisconsin team that was thrown in there as well. Folks, you look back at the history since 2014, this is not a bad division. You had an outlier of a season in 2022 where everybody beat up on each other. That's the fact of the matter. Now let's dive into something else. Nebraska. The Nebraska Cornhuskers, where do they sit in the grand scheme of this thing? Because that's, I think, what people are really pointing out is if this is coming, Scott Docterman, great reporter for The Athletic, he mentioned on Twitter, if this is coming from a Wisconsin columnist, I think people are looking at this from a little bit of a different perspective. I think it's a little bit more understandable. But coming from a program that has beaten Big Ten West teams just 7 times since 2018 seems a little bit hypocritical. I think when the East-West split happened, a lot of people thought, remember, you're coming off the Bo Pelini era, whether they knew it was about to come to an end or not at that time in 2014, the 2015, that kind of range in time. I think a lot of people were expecting, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin. Those are the teams that are going to be fighting over it. They're all going to be ranked somewhere in the top 20, and it's going to be a solid division, right? There's going to be an imbalance. There have been imbalances over time. I've already talked about the Big 12 North versus the Big 12 South. Even in the mighty, the untouchable SEC, there were some times before Georgia really rose up. The SEC East had Florida teams, I think under Will Muschamp, that went to an SEC championship game. I think there was a Tennessee team in there that wasn't all that much of a threat. So as long as we had divisions, geographical divisions, there was going to be an imbalance. Like you put the 3 biggest programs over in the East Division, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. Even though Michigan and Penn State were down at the part of the split, you knew that they were going to come back. Like those programs don't stay down for long, and eventually they did come back, right? James Franklin and Jim Harbaugh were hired right around the time that the East-West split happened, and as they say, the rest is history. Now, the thing that we need to talk about when we talk about Nebraska is they have every opportunity in front of themselves, I think, they had every opportunity to be at that level. And this team, for whatever reason, despite their resources, despite their tradition, despite all of that, still found a way to win 4, 3, 5 games a season. They still found a way to bomb coaching hires in Mike Riley and Scott Frost. Okay, and then this notion that says, well, do you expect Nebraska to carry the torch? Do you expect Nebraska to prop up the Big Ten West? The Big Ten West wasn't that bad to begin with. I think that's the point that I want to start off with. Okay, the slumming in the Big Ten West, looking down upon the Big Ten West. First of all, if you are slumming, which you're not, but if you are slumming, Nebraska is the team that's in the slum. They're the team that's at the bottom. I believe the Huskers did not hold up their end of the bargain. I talked about those three teams, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, that were maybe expected to compete for division championships. Iowa won some championships. Wisconsin won some division championships. Even Northwestern won a couple of Big Ten West division championships, folks. But Nebraska never got it done. That's why this comment in this article seems a bit hypocritical from me. I look at the Big Ten from a top. I don't look at it from a fan perspective, at least from each team. I'm a fan of the Big Ten Conference, not necessarily an individual team. But when I look above it from 10,000 feet and I look at the Big Ten West from 10,000 feet, Nebraska hasn't lived up to their end of the bargain that I think a lot of people expected. Okay, Nebraska to really be at that level with the Iowas, with the Wisconsins, heck, even with the Northwestern, with everything that Nebraska has in their program and the resources and the opportunities to compete at that level, they just haven't been able to get it done. That's the fact of the matter, is that Nebraska, when you talk about slums and you would talk about slumming in the Big Ten West, Nebraska has been down at that level. That's the fact of the matter, okay? And then you have to factor in that the Big Ten West historically is not that bad of a division, folks, okay? You've got your three biggest programs in the East, and you've got good, solid to good programs in the Big Ten West. The West Division served the Big Ten well, but when you have a divisional format, there will be imbalances, especially when you have Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State in the other division. I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think that this is all on Nebraska? Do you think Nebraska is mostly to blame for this, or maybe some other schools to blame for at least the perception of the Big Ten West? What are your thoughts on the Big Ten West as a whole? Big Ten West is going away after this year, so this is going to be a moot point in a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.